The Velthrani Dominion had been conquering planets for over 100 years. They had taken 17 star systems, and not a single species had ever stopped them. Their method was always the same. They would arrive with their massive fleet, send down their super soldiers, and within days, the planet would belong to them. Their super soldiers were called the Cathari. They were not born like normal beings. They were created in laboratories. Their bodies changed and improved until they became perfect killing machines. Each Cathari stood 9 feet tall. Their bones were mixed with metal alloys that made them nearly unbreakable. Their muscles could lift 3 tons without any difficulty. Their eyes could see in complete darkness. Their reflexes were faster than any natural creature in the known galaxy. No army had ever defeated them. No weapon had ever stopped them. When the Cathari landed on a planet, that planet fell. High Commander Zorith stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Conquest, watching the blue and green planet rotate slowly before him. Earth, the humans called it. A small world orbiting and unremarkable. Yellow star at the edge of the galaxy, his fleet had emerged from hyperspace 3 hours ago. 47 warships now hung in orbit above this primitive world. Zorith had already sent the standard message: surrender within 1 planetary rotation, or face complete destruction. He felt nothing but boredom. This would be the same as every other conquest. The humans would try to fight. They would send their primitive weapons against the Cathari. They would fail, and then they would serve the Dominion or die. Zorath turned to his second-in-command, a tall Velthrani female named Sarath. Her purple skin gleamed under the bridge lights, and her 4 eyes focused on the data screens before her. Report on the human military capabilities, Zorith ordered. Sarath touched several controls. And information scrolled across the main display. Primitive projectile weapons. Chemical explosives. Nuclear devices. Nothing that could penetrate Cathari armor. They also possess a small orbital presence, but their spacecraft are slow and poorly armed. As expected, Zorith said. Prepare the first wave of Cathari for deployment. I want this conquest completed within 3 solar cycles. But before Sarath could respond, a communication signal appeared on the screens. It was coming from the planet below. They wish to speak, Sarath said, surprise in her voice. Most species simply attacked or surrendered. Few asked for conversation. Show me, Zorath commanded. The screen flickered, and a human female appeared. She wore a formal dark suit, and her face showed no fear. Behind her, Zorith could see other humans in military uniforms. I am Patricia Holden, the woman said. I represent the United Nations of Earth. We have received your ultimatum, Zorith smiled, showing his sharp teeth. Then you understand your situation. Surrender now, and many of your people will be allowed to live as servants of the Dominion. We have a counterproposal, Patricia said calmly. This was unexpected. Zorith leaned forward in his command chair. Speak. We propose a trial by combat. Your greatest champion against ours. If your champion wins, we surrender unconditionally. If our champion wins, you leave and never return. Sarath made a sound of amusement beside him. Zorith himself felt his smile widen. This was not the first time a species had made such an offer, hoping their greatest warrior might somehow defeat a Cathari. It had never worked, except Zorith said. Send your champion to my flagship. The combat will take place in our main hangar bay. Patricia nodded once. Our champion will arrive within 6 hours.
Ow.
The communication ended. Zorith turned to Sarath. Summon Vorn. He will represent us in this combat. Vorn was the greatest Cathari warrior alive. He had personally killed over 300 enemy combatants across a dozen different worlds. He had never been wounded in battle. He was the perfect killing machine. And Zorith almost felt sorry for whatever poor creature the humans would send against him. Almost 6 hours later, a small human shuttle approached the Eternal Conquest. Zorith had gathered his officers in the observation deck above the main hangar bay. They would all watch as Vorn destroyed the human champion in what would certainly be a very short fight. The shuttle landed, and its door opened. Zorath expected many things. Perhaps a human in powered armor. Perhaps some kind of cybernetic warrior with mechanical limbs and built-in weapons. Perhaps a team of their best soldiers, hoping numbers might overcome the Cathari's advantage. What walked out of the shuttle was none of these things. The human was old. His hair was gray and thin. His face was lined with wrinkles. He wore strange blue pants made of heavy cloth, held up by straps over his shoulders. His shirt was made of a checkered pattern in red and white. On his feet were heavy boots covered in dried mud, and in his hands he carried a farming tool. A pitchfork, Zoroth's translator supplied, a primitive implement used for moving plant material. The observation deck fell completely silent. "Is this a joke?" Zoroth demanded, activating the communication system to the hangar below. The old human looked up toward the observation deck. His face showed no fear. His eyes, a pale blue color, were calm and steady. "Nice ship you got here," he said. "Bet it cost a pretty penny. I asked you a question, human. Is this a joke? Where's your champion?" "I am the champion," the old man replied. "Name's Harold Briggs. I'm a farmer from Kansas." Besides Zoroth, Saroth pulled up information on her datapad. Kansas is a region in the central part of their largest continent. It is primarily used for agriculture. The human appears to be telling the truth about his occupation. A farmer, Zoroth repeated. He could not understand what was happening. Were the humans simply surrendering in an insulting way? Were they so certain of defeat that they had decided to mock the Dominion with this absurd display? The opposite doors of the hangar opened, and Vorn entered. The Cathari champion was enormous, even by the standards of his enhanced species. His gray skin was covered in ritual scars from his many victories. His eyes glowed with a soft red light, the result of his enhanced vision implants. In his massive hands, he carried a plasma blade, a weapon that could cut through starship armor like paper. Vorn stopped when he saw his opponent. For a long moment, he simply stared at the old human with the farming tool. "You insult me," Vorn growled, his deep voice echoing through the hangar. Harold Briggs adjusted his grip on the pitchfork. He showed no sign of fear, no trembling, no nervous movements. He simply looked at the 9-foot killing machine before him with the same expression a man might wear when examining a piece of farming equipment. "Son," Harold said calmly, "I've been getting up at 4 in the morning for 50 years. I've delivered calves in blizzards. I've buried 3 dogs and 1 wife. I've kept my farm running through droughts and floods and 2 recessions. You don't scare me." In the observation deck, Zoroth felt a strange sensation. It took him a moment to identify it. For the first time in his long career of conquest, he felt uncertain. 3 days earlier, Harold Briggs had been fixing a fence post on his farm when the black vehicles appeared on the dirt road. Leading to his property, he had seen the news about the alien ships. Everyone on Earth had seen it. Giant vessels hanging in the sky, visible even during daylight hours. The television showed nothing else. World leaders gave speeches. Military forces mobilized. People panicked, filling grocery stores and gas stations, preparing for the end of the world. Harold had watched the news for about an hour, then gone back to his work. Fence posts did not fix themselves, and his cattle needed to stay in their pasture, regardless of what was happening in space. His daughter Maggie had driven up from town that morning. She was 41 years old now. Though Harold still saw the little girl who used to follow him around the farm, asking endless questions about everything, she had her mother's brown eyes and her father's stubborn nature. "Dad, there are aliens in orbit," she had said, standing on the porch with her arms crossed. "Maybe you should come stay with me in town." Harold had shaken his head. "What good would that do? If they're going to blow us all up, doesn't matter where I am. And if they're not, then I've got work to do." Maggie had opened her mouth to argue, but she knew her father. When Harold Briggs made up his mind about something, no force on Earth could change it. Apparently, no force from space could either, so she had stayed with him at the farm. And together, they had watched the news and waited like everyone else on the planet. When the black vehicles arrived, Harold did not stop his work. He continued hammering at the fence post while 4 SUVs pulled up to his farmhouse, and people in suits and uniforms climbed out. A woman approached him. She looked tired, as if she had not slept in days. Behind her came military officers and people carrying electronic equipment. "Mr. Briggs?" the woman asked. "Harold Briggs." "That's me." My name is Patricia Holden. I represent the United Nations Emergency Response Committee. We need to talk to you about the alien invasion. Harold finally stopped his work and looked at her. Saw it on the news. Ugly-looking fellas. Those aliens. Patricia did not smile. Mr. Briggs, our scientists have been studying the alien transmission. The invaders call themselves the Velthrani Dominion. They have conquered many other planets using enhanced soldiers called Cathari. These soldiers are genetically modified to be nearly unstoppable. Sounds like a problem, Harold agreed. It is, however, our analysis teams have discovered something remarkable. Patricia pulled out a tablet and showed him an image of complex biological structures. The Cathari enhancement process relies on a specific protein structure in their muscles. This protein is what gives them their incredible strength and speed. Harold looked at the image. He did not understand the science, but he recognized patterns. Patterns were the same whether they appeared in crops or alien biology. That protein structure, Patricia continued, is almost identical to a compound we found in an agricultural database. A compound related to a corn disease called Gauss's wilt. Now Harold understood why they had come to him. Gauss's wilt was a bacterial disease that had plagued his cornfields for decades. He had spent 40 years fighting it, studying it, developing resistant crop strains and natural countermeasures. You think my bacteria can hurt their super soldiers, he said. What? We think a concentrated form of the bacterial compound could disable their enhanced muscles entirely. And you, Mr. Briggs, are the world's leading expert on this specific bacteria. You have samples and countermeasures that no laboratory possesses. Harold looked back at his half-fixed fence post, then at the sky where alien ships waited to destroy his world. What do you need me to do? Patricia explained the plan. The aliens had accepted Earth's offer of trial by combat, not knowing what Earth was really planning. They expected humanity to send a soldier or a warrior. Instead, they would send Harold. Why me? Harold asked. You could just give my bacteria to some military man. Someone younger and stronger, Patricia admitted. But our psychologists believe the aliens will underestimate you completely. An old farmer with a farming tool? They will not expect any threat. And our strategists believe that your experience, your patience, your ability to wait and observe, these qualities may be more valuable than any military training. That night, Harold sat on his porch with Maggie. The stars were hidden by clouds, but somewhere up there, alien ships waited. This is crazy, Maggie said. Her voice was thick with emotion. Dad, you're 63 years old. You've never been in a fight in your life. Got in a fight once, Harold said. Back in high school, Danny Parker called your mother ugly? I broke his nose, Dad. This is serious. Harold reached over and took his daughter's hand. Her skin was rougher now than when she was young. Working hands, like his. She had become a farmer too, whether she admitted it or not. Maggie, I know it sounds crazy, but think about what we do every day. We plant seeds and wait months for them to grow. We watch the weather and adapt to whatever it brings. We deal with problems that would drive city people insane, and we do it year after year, decade after decade. He squeezed her hand gently. Those super soldiers, they're built for quick fights, fast victories. But farming isn't about being fast or strong. It's about being patient. It's about enduring whatever comes and still being there at the end. Maggie wiped her eyes. And if patience isn't enough? Harold smiled, the same gentle smile he had worn when teaching her to drive a tractor, when showing her how to care for sick animals, when explaining why they planted certain crops in certain fields. Then at least I tried. And that's all any of us can do. The next morning, Harold began preparing. The government scientists arrived with equipment to modify his Pxtchfork, building tiny containers into the steel tines that would hold the concentrated bacterial compound. One scratch would be enough to deliver it into an alien bloodstream, but Harold knew that weapons alone would not be enough. He spent hours watching footage of the Cathari that Earth's intelligence agencies had gathered. He studied how they moved, how they fought, how they thought. He saw patterns. He always saw patterns. The Cathari were aggressive. They attacked immediately and overwhelmed their opponents with speed and strength. Every fight he watched ended within seconds. The super soldiers did not know how to handle a prolonged battle, because they had never needed to. And Harold Briggs had spent his entire life in prolonged battles. Against weather, against disease, against the endless challenges of keeping a farm alive the day before his departure. Maggie drove him to the government facility where the shuttle waited. She hugged him tightly, and he felt her tears against his shoulder. "Come back," she whispered. "Please come back. I'll do my best," Harold promised. "Keep an eye on the cattle while I'm gone, and don't forget to check the irrigation system in the south field." Maggie laughed through her tears. "You're about to fight an alien super soldier, and you're worried about irrigation." Harold kissed her forehead. "Farms don't run themselves, honey. No matter what's happening in space." Then he picked up his pitchfork, boarded the shuttle, and flew up to meet his destiny. The hangar bay of the alien flagship was enormous. Harold guessed it was about the size of 4 football fields put together. The ceiling rose so high that it disappeared into shadows and blinking lights. Strange machines and vehicles filled the edges of the space. Leaving the center clear for the combat, Harold stood alone in that vast emptiness. Holding his pitchfork and looking at the creature that had been sent to kill him, Vorn was everything the government briefings had described. 9 feet of muscle and metal and death. His skin was the color of storm clouds, covered in scars that told stories of violence. His eyes glowed like red embers in a dying fire. The plasma blade in his hands hummed with energy, and Harold could feel the heat from it even from 30 feet away. Above them, in the observation deck, Harold could see the alien commander and his officers watching. They were waiting for entertainment. They expected this to be quick and bloody. Harold had different plans. He had spent his life dealing with problems that seemed impossible. Droughts that killed half his crops. Floods that destroyed months of work. Diseases that spread through his fields like fire. Each time, people had told him to give up. Each time, he had found a way to survive. This was just another problem. A bigger problem, certainly. But still a problem that could be solved if he thought clearly and acted wisely. The alien commander's voice echoed through the hangar. "The combat will begin on my signal. The fight ends when one participant is dead or surrenders. There are no other rules." Vorn shifted his weight, his massive muscles rippling under his gray skin. He was eager. Harold could see it in his posture. The super soldier wanted to charge, to attack, to end this quickly. That eagerness was a weakness. Harold remembered something his father had told him decades ago, when he was just a boy learning to work the land. The old man had been watching a storm approach, dark clouds piling up on the horizon. "See that storm?" his father had said. "It's powerful. It's dangerous. It could destroy everything we've built. But you know what else it is?" Young Harold had shaken his head. Impatient. "A storm can't wait. It has to spend its energy as fast as possible. But we can wait. We can endure. And when the storm is gone, we'll still be here." Harold had never forgotten that lesson. "Begin," the alien commander announced. Vorn charged. The Cathari moved faster than anything Harold had ever seen. One moment, he was standing across the hangar. The next moment, he was almost on top of Harold. Plasma blade raised for a killing strike. Harold had expected this. He had watched the videos. He knew how the Cathari fought. He stepped to the side. Not far. Not dramatically. Just enough to let the blade pass through empty air where he had been standing. Vorn recovered instantly, spinning and slashing horizontally. Harold ducked, feeling the heat of the plasma pass over his head. The super soldier followed with a downward strike, then a thrust, then a sweeping cut aimed at Harold's legs. Each time, Harold was not there. He was not trying to fight. He was not trying to attack. He was simply not being in the path of the blade. Moving just enough, conserving his energy. Waiting in the observation deck, High Commander Zorath watched with growing confusion. The human should be dead by now. Any other opponent would have been cut to pieces within the first seconds. But the old farmer kept moving, kept avoiding, kept surviving. What is happening? Sareth asked, her 4 eyes blinking rapidly. Why can Vorn not hit him? Zorth did not answer. He was watching the human's movements, trying to understand the pattern. The farmer was not fast. He was not strong. He was not using any technology or enhancement that the sensors could detect. He was simply reading Vorn's attacks before they happened and moving. Out of the way with minimal effort, on the hangar floor, Vorn was growing frustrated. He increased his speed, launching a flurry of attacks that would have overwhelmed any trained warrior. His blade became a blur of glowing energy, striking from every angle. Harold kept moving. Step, duck, lean, step again. He was like water flowing around a rock, never stopping, never resisting directly, but never being caught either. Vorn roared, his voice echoing through the vast space. Fight me. Harold did not respond. He did not waste energy on words. He simply kept moving, his old boots shuffling across the metal floor, his weathered hands gripping the pitchfork that he had not yet used. 10 minutes passed. Then 20. Vorn's movements were becoming slower. His enhanced muscles were burning through their energy reserves at an enormous rate. The Cathari were designed for quick victories, their bodies optimized for short bursts of extreme power. They had never needed endurance because they had never faced an opponent who could survive long enough to tire them. But Harold Briggs had spent 50 years doing hard physical labor. He had walked miles every day checking on crops and livestock. He had worked from dawn until dark, year after year, decade after decade. His body was not enhanced, but it was efficient. It knew how to conserve energy. It knew how to endure. And now, for the first time in his existence, Orn was experiencing exhaustion. The super soldier stopped, breathing heavily. His plasma blade wavered in his grip. Sweat, or something like it, dripped from his gray skin. Harold stopped too, maintaining his distance. He was breathing normally. His old heart was barely elevated. He had spent more energy doing morning chores on his farm. What are you? Vorn demanded. Harold considered the question. He thought about his farm, his family, his life. He thought about all the challenges he had faced and overcome. I'm just a farmer, he said. And right now, I'm farming you. Vorn did not understand the words, but he understood the meaning. The human was not trying to defeat him through combat. He was trying to exhaust him, to drain his energy, to wear him down until he could not fight anymore. It was a strategy no one had ever used against the Cathari, because no one had ever survived long enough to use it. With a roar of rage, Vorn charged again. But his movements were slower now, his attacks less precise. The energy that had made him unstoppable was running out. Burned away in futile strikes against an opponent who refused to be hit, Harold continued his patient dance, avoiding each attack with minimal movement, waiting for the moment when the storm would finally spend itself. In the observation deck, Zoroth finally understood what he was watching. And for the first time in 200 years of conquest, he felt fear. 45 minutes had passed since the combat began. In the observation deck, the alien officers watched in stunned silence. No one spoke. No one moved. They had witnessed countless battles throughout their careers of conquest, but they had never seen anything like this. Vorn, the greatest Cathari warrior ever created, was on his knees. His plasma blade lay on the floor beside him, deactivated. His arms hung limp at his sides. His enhanced muscles, those magnificent creations of genetic engineering and surgical modification, had nothing left to give. They had burned through every reserve of energy, every emergency supply. Every hidden resource the super soldier who had killed 300 opponents was now helpless. And Harold Briggs stood before him, Pxtchfork resting against his shoulder, barely showing any signs of tiredness at all. Possible, Sareth whispered. This is impossible. High Commander Zorth said nothing. He was staring at the old human, trying to understand how this had happened. The Cathari were the ultimate warriors. They had been designed by the greatest scientists of the Dominion, tested against every known threat, improved over generations of conquest, and they had been defeated by patience. On the hangar floor, Harold walked slowly toward the kneeling super soldier. His footsteps echoed in the vast silence of the space. Every alien watching held their breath. Harold stopped in front of Vorn and looked down at him. The Catharius' red eyes, dimmed now from energy depletion, looked back with a mixture of exhaustion and confusion. "I have a question for you," Harold said quietly. "In all those worlds you conquered, did you ever try to understand the people you were fighting?" Vorn did not answer. Perhaps he could not. Perhaps he had never considered such a thing. "'Cause here's what I've learned about fighting," Harold continued. "The strongest isn't always the winner. The fastest isn't always the winner. Sometimes the winner is just the one who refuses to quit." He crouched down so that his eyes were level with the super soldier's face. Up close, he could see that Vorn was young. Despite his size and his scars, there was something almost childlike about him. He had been created for one purpose and had never known anything else. "You Cathari, you're built for quick victories. Everything about you is designed for short, violent fights. But you know what? The universe doesn't work that way. The universe is slow and patient and doesn't care how strong you are." Harold straightened up and looked toward the observation deck. "Your super soldiers are impressive. I'll give you that. But they have a weakness you never saw. They can't endure. They can't outlast. They can't survive a fight that goes on longer than their energy reserves." He held up the pitchfork so that the aliens could see it clearly. "And now I'm going to show you something else." Harold reached out with one tine of the pitchfork and drew it across Vorn's forearm. The scratch was small, barely breaking the skin. A thin line of dark blood appeared. Vorn looked at the wound with confusion. It was nothing. A scratch like that would heal in minutes on a normal Cathari. But this was not a normal scratch. Within seconds, Vorn's eyes widened. He could feel something happening inside his body. Something was moving through his blood, spreading through his enhanced muscles. The bacterial compound that Harold had spent 40 years fighting in his cornfields was now attacking the protein structures that gave the Cathari there. "Power!" Vorn screamed. It was a terrible sound, echoing through the hangar and up to the observation deck. The officers flinched back from the windows, watching in horror as their greatest warrior began to change. His muscles, those massive, enhanced creations, started to shrink. The gray skin that had been stretched tight over swollen tissue became loose and wrinkled. Vorn's arms, which could lift 3 tons, became thin and weak. His legs, which could propel him at 60 miles per hour, became barely able to support his weight in less than a minute. The transformation was complete. Vorn was still alive, but he was no longer a super soldier. The bacterial compound had destroyed his enhancements, returning his body to something close to its original, unmodified state. He collapsed to the floor, gasping. Staring at his diminished hands with disbelief, Harold looked down at him without hatred or triumph. There was only sadness in his old eyes. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "I didn't want to do this. I've spent my whole life growing things, not destroying them. But you came to my planet. You threatened my people, my daughter, my home." He turned to face the observation deck directly. "Now here's my offer to you." High Commander Zoroth leaned forward, his hands gripping the railing in front of him. Every officer on the deck was frozen, waiting to hear what the human would say. Harold pulled a small canister from the pocket of his overalls. It was made of simple metal, the kind of container a farmer might use to store seeds. "This is more of the same compound," Harold said. "Enough to infect your entire ship through the ventilation system. Every Cathari on board would end up like him." He nodded toward Vorn, still lying on the floor in his shrunken body. "I've also got more of it back on Earth. A lot more. We've been producing it since you arrived. If you try to invade, if you send your super soldiers down to our planet, we'll release it into the atmosphere. Your entire army will be useless within hours." The silence in the hangar was absolute. "So here's the choice," Harold continued. "You can leave. Right now. Go back to wherever you came from and never return. Tell your empire that Earth is not worth the trouble. Tell them we're crazy, dangerous, whatever you want. Just go." He paused, letting the words sink in. Or you can stay and fight. And I promise you, if you do that, you will lose. Not because we're stronger than you. Not because we're smarter than you. But because we're stubborn. We're patient. And we will never, ever quit. In the observation deck, Sarath turned to Zorath. Her 4 eyes were wide with something the High Commander had never seen in her before. Fear, Commander, she said softly. What are your orders? Zorath looked at the old human standing alone in the hangar bay. A farmer. A simple farmer with a pitchfork had defeated their greatest warrior and now held their entire fleet hostage. For 200 years, Zorath had conquered worlds through strength and fear. He had never met a species that could not be broken until now. He activated the communication system, and his voice echoed through the hangar. Human, Harold Briggs. Harold looked up at him, waiting. We withdraw. You have won. The words tasted like poison in Zorath's mouth, but he was not a fool. He knew when a battle was lost. Harold nodded once. Smart choice. Then he turned and walked toward his shuttle, moving slowly, calmly, with the same unhurried pace he used when walking through his fields at home behind him. Vorn lay on the floor, forgotten by everyone except Harold himself. I'm sorry, Harold said again, too quietly for anyone else to hear. I really am. Then he stepped into his shuttle and began the journey home. 3 months had passed since the alien fleet disappeared into hyperspace. The world had changed in those months. Politicians gave speeches about unity and survival. Scientists studied the Velthrani technology left behind when their ships departed so quickly. Military leaders developed new defense plans based on what they had learned. But in Kansas, on a small farm surrounded by fields of corn and wheat, Harold Briggs was fixing the same fence post he had been working on when the government first arrived. The summer heat was heavy and still. Insects buzzed in the tall grass along the fence line. In the distance, his cattle moved slowly across their pasture. Dark shapes against the golden landscape, Harold wiped sweat from his forehead and examined his work. The post was finally solid, driven deep into the Kansas soil. It would stand for another decade at least. Maybe longer. He heard a car coming up the dirt road and looked up to see his daughter's old pickup truck approaching. Maggie parked near the farmhouse and walked toward him, carrying 2 glasses of cold lemonade. Thought you could use this, she said, handing him one. Harold took a long drink. The lemonade was perfect, just the right balance of sweet and sour. His wife had taught Maggie the recipe years ago, and the daughter had never forgotten it. Thanks, honey. Maggie stood beside him, looking out at the fields. The corn was growing well this year, tall and green, stretching toward the summer sky. It would be a good harvest. The president called again, Maggie said. That's the 5th time this week. Harold snorted. What does she want now? Same thing. Another ceremony. Another medal. She wants you to come to Washington. Told her last time I'd accept a medal if she came out here and helped with the harvest. Never heard back. Maggie smiled, but there was something sad in her eyes. Dad, you saved the world. Don't you think that deserves some recognition? Harold considered the question while looking at his fields. He thought about everything that had happened. The alien ships. The super soldier. The moment when he had stood alone in that massive hangar, knowing that the fate of his planet depended on what he did next. Recognition is fine for people who need it, he said finally. But I know what I did. You know what I did? That's enough for me. The news people won't leave you alone. They'll get bored eventually. They always do. Aggie sighed. She had learned long ago that arguing with her father was pointless. He was the most stubborn man she had ever known. It was probably why he was still alive. There's something else, she said. The United Nations sent a message. They're receiving communications from other species, other civilizations out in the galaxy. Harold raised an eyebrow. That's so? Apparently, word has spread about what happened, about what you did. They're calling you the farmer in their transmissions. Some of them want to make contact. They want to know more about humanity. Harold thought about this. Out there among the stars, aliens were talking about him. About a 63-year-old man with a pitchfork who had faced down a super soldier and won. What do they say about us? He asked. Mostly that we're crazy, Maggie admitted. That we sent an old farmer to fight instead of a warrior. They don't understand it. Good, let them be confused. Keeps them from trying anything stupid. They stood together in comfortable silence for a while, father and daughter, watching the sun climb higher in the cloudless sky. A hawk circled lazily over the far field, hunting for mice in the wheat. Dad, Maggie said eventually, do you ever think about what would have happened if things had gone differently? If the bacteria hadn't worked, or if Vorn had been faster, or if— No, Harold interrupted gently. I don't think about that. Why not? He set down his lemonade glass and picked up his pitchfork. The same pitchfork that had faced an alien super soldier. The same pitchfork that had helped save humanity, because thinking about what might have happened doesn't change what did happen. I learned that a long time ago. Farming teaches you that. You can't control the weather. You can't control the insects or the diseases or the prices. All you can control is what you do each day. How hard you work. How much you care. He hefted the pitchfork, feeling its familiar weight in his hands. I did what I could with what I had. It worked. That's the end of the story. Maggie watched him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. You're right. As usual, don't tell anyone. I've got a reputation for being a humble old farmer, she laughed, a real laugh this time, and the sound of it made Harold smile. His daughter was happy. His farm was thriving. His planet was safe. What more could any man want? The days that followed were quiet ones. Harold returned to his normal routine, feeding the cattle, checking the crops, repairing equipment, doing the 1,000 small tasks that kept a farm running. Sometimes reporters would drive up the dirt road, hoping for an interview. He always sent them away politely, but firmly. One evening, as the sun was setting and the sky was turning orange and red, Harold sat on his porch and watched the first stars appear. Somewhere out there, among those distant lights, the Velthrani Dominion was continuing its conquests. But not here. Not on Earth. He thought about Vorn sometimes. The super soldier who had been reduced to a normal being. Harold wondered what had happened to him. Was he still alive? Had the Dominion killed him for his failure? Or was he somewhere out in the galaxy, living a different kind of life? Harold hoped it was the latter. He had not wanted to hurt anyone. He had only wanted to protect his home. The screen door creaked, and Maggie came out to join him. She sat in the chair beside his, the same chair her mother had used for 30 years. Beautiful night, she said. Always is this time of year. They watched the stars together, father and daughter, as the darkness deepened and the Milky Way became visible. A river of light stretching across the sky. You know, Maggie said thoughtfully, I've been thinking about what you said. About how farming teaches you things. What about it? I think maybe that's what makes humans different. Not our technology or our intelligence or our strength, but our patience. Our ability to work hard and wait for results? To endure whatever comes and keep going? Harold nodded slowly. That might be true. The Velthrani, they built their empire on quick victories. Fast conquests. They never had to learn patience because they never needed it. And that was their weakness, Harold agreed. They didn't understand that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply not give up. Maggie reached over and took her father's hand. His skin was rough and calloused from a lifetime of work, but his grip was still strong. I'm proud of you, Dad. Harold squeezed her hand gently. I'm proud of you too, honey. You're the best thing I ever grew. She laughed softly at the farming joke, and he smiled. Above them, the stars continued their ancient dance. Out in the galaxy, empires rose and fell, species conquered and were conquered. And the great drama of civilization played out across countless worlds, but on a small farm in Kansas, a farmer and his daughter sat on their porch and watched the night sky. Knowing that they had played their part in that drama, humanity had faced its first test from the stars, and humanity had endured. Harold looked at his pitchfork, leaning against the porch railing where he had left it. Tomorrow, he would use it for its intended purpose. moving hay and cleaning stalls and doing the simple work that kept his farm alive. But tonight, he let himself remember. A hangar bay the size of 4 football fields, a 9-foot super soldier with glowing red eyes, and an old farmer from Kansas who had refused to give up. Some species conquered with force, humanity endured, and in the end, that made all the difference.